We're going to go ahead and jump on here. We're with Zachary Popp, and then he's going to tell us a little bit about himself and his origin story and how he came into the hempcrete and the hemp building space with Sativa Panel. They're based out of Wittenberg, Wisconsin. And Zach, go ahead and I'll let you have the floor, and you can tell us where you are, what you're doing, and then, but more importantly, treat this as though you're a superhero and this is your origin story movie, and tell us the plot line of that movie and how you made your way down the rabbit hole in the first place.
All right. Well, I'm going to be real dramatic with this then. But my origin story actually is pretty interesting. It goes back to 2010. 2010, moved into a new home. And that whole first winter, we lived in this house. My youngest daughter at the time was sick. She just was, suffering with chronic respiratory issues and was battling that all winter. And we just kind of chalked it up to like, well, we moved into a new community, a new home. She's just catching new illnesses. But then one day I walk into her bedroom and I see at the very bottom of her wall, right underneath the window, is all these little black spots. And I'm like, well, that's a little weird. That's not good. And then I went and I feel the carpet, and the carpet underneath the window is just soaked. And I'm like, whoa, that's water. Where is that coming from? And long story short, ended up finding out that that window was ice damming. It was a north-facing window. I'm up here in Wisconsin, so we always have this hot and cold battle, right, in between your outside and inside. So there's a lot of condensation, window ice dammed, and all that moisture just leaked right into the wall because all that ice actually backed up and even covered the weep holes on the window. So when I tore into that wall, just the whole inside of it was just covered with black mold. Like what we were seeing on the outside was like 1% of what was on the inside. It was just terrible. And I was finally like, wow, okay, well, that was the cause of my daughter's sickness. And it was at that point I kind of went on this journey to try to figure out like what type of building material could have prevented that. And my background is in construction. My dad was a contractor. I worked as a framer for several years. So I knew what people conventionally use. I knew how you typically build walls. And I also knew that I tore into a lot of walls when we were doing, remodeling projects that also had mold and rot and all of these issues in their walls. And I'm like, this is a problem kind of worth solving. Is there a material that could solve this? And so just started digging into all sorts of alternative building methods. And I thought they're all super cool. Like, came across Adobe and Cobb and straw bale. And I'm like, all these are great. And then I stumbled upon hempcrete. And that was the one material that checked the box of being mold resistant. But then as I was going down the line and looking at its other properties, I'm like, well, this is also fire resistant. It's pest resistant. It's rot resistant. I'm like, this is kind of like a super material. And, and at that time, almost unheard of in the US, a little bit more common in Europe, but I decided it was something worth playing around with. So it was probably 6 or 7 years. I kind of just played mad scientist in my garage, just building hemp block after hemp block to try to figure out, which formulation produced the strongest product, and and which shape and form is potentially the most usable. Because I thought, hempcrete is awesome. I think it's awesome in all its forms, but I saw a bigger opportunity in the precast space. And I thought, I'm going to try to make something that's a precast block or a precast panel that can be shipped to the job site and ready to use. Because just coming from a carpenter's background, I knew that that's what I would prefer. So of course I'm biased towards towards that side of it. And then I came up with the Z panel design, and that was around 2018. So it took several years of tinkering, but I finally came up with something that worked. Built a small test structure here in Wisconsin, and have been going through the ICCES code certification process for a few years now with that material. That's our first product, but that's kind of a long answer. But that's my origin story. I really approached
Oh
hempcrete.
no,
Yeah.
that was perfect. And then now, so between 2010 and 2018, now I really went down the rabbit hole in 2018 because I, like you, had done a lot of fix and flip as far as investments. I too found the mold when we tore it out. Go back to the 2010 when you were going down the pathway of discovery, and then you said you turned into mad scientist. What years were those, and then how were you able to find material to tinker with? That was an interesting time to be in. That we've toured some projects that were built about that time, but that was exotic.
It was, yeah. I think the Asheville hemp house, that was one that was built around that time. I think that was one of the first in the nation. But you're right, it was just super rare. Um, yeah, getting hemp was kind of hard. I had to import it. My herd, I can't even remember who I bought it from. Honestly, it's so long ago, but I remember it had to come from France, Russia, or the Netherlands. And those are all three countries that I sourced herd from at that time. And I remember like the first time I pulled the trigger and purchased a full pallet. It's kind of a funny story. It ended up getting shipped to my neighbor's house. They have a machining business just down the road. And this pallet of hemp shows up, and he's like, "We got something that was delivered here on accident." He's like, "I don't know what it is," and I was like, it's a hemp herd." I was like, "I'll come get that. Don't worry about it," because even that was I think around 2012 or something. And, people still had like some reservations around even dealing with hemp. But anyway, so that's where I was getting my hemp from, and then also as far as the binder, I played around with a lot of the some of the standard binders from Europe. But I also wanted to try to figure out if there was a way to make a binder with hydrated lime versus hydraulic. And played around with that a lot. I ended up reaching out. This was a long time ago. He probably wouldn't remember it, but Chris Megwood, reached out to him up in Canada to say, "Hey, what have you found work well as a posilon?" And he gave me some ideas, and I just tested all of those at that time. Ended up landing on one that was both domestic and relatively affordable. We use pumice as our posilon. Ends up working out pretty well. And at that time I wasn't doing like formal scientific tests, but essentially what I was making little cubes in my garage. I was making one with one binder, always all in the same shape and density, but one with one binder, one with another, and then I was essentially just compressing them to see their compressive strength with weight. And I ended up finding that the binder we came up with, or I came up with using just hydrated lime and pumice, was working out really well. It was as strong as the binders from Europe. So I was like, well, this is something that's we can work with. That this is great because these are domestic products. I can source these locally. I mean, I can get all my lime from 60 miles away, and my pumice at least here in the U.S. So and that was, yeah, boy, it's been so long ago now, but that was probably in between 2011 and 2015 where I was doing this all part-time, right? This wasn't my full-time gig at that time. I was just chipping away at this. Sometimes I take a few months break because life gets in the way, but I would work at it when I could. But it was just something I just never let go of. I just saw so much opportunity in this, and I had to keep pursuing it, even if it was very slowly over the course of a long period of time.
Now, talk about that ice damming. How did you address that? I mean, you didn't go straight into putting hempcrete into the wall. Did y'all just take that out and put new materials back in and accommodate that? And then, is that like something that it's an anomaly, or is that a common occurrence in your climate zone to where you have that problem all the time? And is this something that can be part of the remedy?
Yeah, I think it is more common than people realize, especially in northern climates where we do have, pretty intense vapor pressures in the winter. When I started digging into research, I found that 70% of homes do have some degree of mold. And there's also a pretty high percentage of people who have a genetic propensity to be very affected by mold. It's about 28% of people. So just seeing those two statistics, I thought, yeah, this is a bigger issue than people might realize. And it's always kind of the one thing that the health field doesn't like to address always, but there's a good chance that there's a lot of health problems that people are experiencing that are stemming from toxic living environments, and even more specifically toxic mold in their homes, or even their place of work. Yeah, so I if we were to do like a a rehab project and try to just replace the current wall materials with hempcrete. Of course, there's challenges that exist with that, but it's doable, and that's why I thought this is something that can work for both new construction and remodeling projects, and that's why I think it's cool and I see so much potential with it.
And so you said carpentry was in your background. Were there any interesting connecting points between the carpentry, the material, the mad scientist inventor role, and then the research into the health role? Because you were uniquely motivated. You had a child that that's your area of research. It wasn't just like a hobby for your health. Were there any interesting things that came about or experiences that you had in your research and your pathway?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. Now that you say that, I think back to some of the early research I found where I cannot find it. Gene or Ray, you might know this too, but I remember coming across some research from a long time ago where they actually evaluated the health of people who resided in hempcrete structures. This was in Europe, and they found that they were healthier. But I just cannot find that anymore. But that was probably the more interesting pieces of literature that I came across. And I swear I didn't just dream that. It's got to be out there somewhere. But yeah, I mean, just for me as a father, that's my biggest motivation. And it's always been my motivation. Like, I know that our homes and our buildings just can be healthier. Some people are. I mean, there's so many benefits of hempcrete. There's a sustainability piece, there's a health piece, there's the empowering local communities factor. Like there's all these things that are great about it. And I think people tend to be more motivated in one of those areas. And for me, it definitely was the health factor. My background, I was a personal trainer and I was a carpenter, right? So I really valued health, eating healthy, exercise, all those things. And I also knew how to build homes. So I guess this is kind of a weird, like, merger between all of
Yeah,
my
it's a
interests.
nice convergence of everything, and I like how you put it, and I use this quite often, is it checks all the check boxes. And so you had is it good as a building material? Is it quality? Yes. Is it available? Yes. Does it do all of these things? And then so here you are, you've got all your check boxes checked, and then now you're moving forward and you're exploring these. So you've got some material that you imported. You sourced some lime, either the different varieties of lime, and then you sought out some colleagues and some input for the pozzolans. Now, do you still use the mix that you came up with the lime and the pos with the
Yeah, I
pumice?
do. Yeah, it really hasn't changed much at all since probably 2018. I think it's been the same for the last 6 years. I think there's a little tweak before then, but otherwise it's been the same. It seems to work pretty well, and the testing that we've done has yielded positive results. So we don't really see a need to try to change it at this point.
Now, do you do like garage level science on the testing, or I know you said you did some like destructive tests where you compared one to the other, and you've got some anecdotal evidence, and one right next to the other. I pressed this hard doing it. Did you send off to labs or do anything like that in your development?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, initially it started off as being more, I like how you said, garage level. That's when you're low budget. That's how you do things. You make your own tests, however you can do it as affordably as possible. But then as I started to get more serious about it, yeah, we started doing lab tests within certified labs. So the first test I actually did was within a lab that could do an ASTM test, which I think it was C518. That's the insulation test, the thermal insulation test. That was back in, I think, 2019. I just, took a 3-inch slice of one of my Z panels and sent it to a lab to have them R value test it. And to be honest, I wasn't super happy. I was using a really dense mix at that time. I favored density and strength more than insulation. And I got an R value test. I think, what was it? It was only like 1.6 R per inch. It wasn't great. So I was like, well, I'm glad I did this test now, because now I know for sure. And reformulated. went with a much lighter density. And now we're going through the process of not just redoing that test, but doing a lot of tests in a laboratory. So, we've been working directly with ICC, and they, ICC, they've acquired NTA. Some people might know that, but NTA is a big testing, building materials testing kind of conglomerate. They have multiple labs in Texas and Indiana, and I think even one other spot in the U.S. But so they can essentially do all the testing that we need them to do. So we've done a sorry if I'm getting too far ahead of myself here, but we've done a fire test, an NFPA 286 fire test down in Texas. We just did some transverse wind load testing at the NTA ICC lab in Indiana. It was just last week. Haven't gotten results on that yet, so it'd be really cool if I'd have that right now, but I don't have results on that. And then they also did the insulation test again with our new formulation. So that's
How'd
been
that
done.
turn out?
I do not have results on that either. So they're quick. They're pretty good with testing, but sometimes it takes a little while for them to put those reports together. And I get it. Like the fire test report, I think it was like 20 pages or more. It was long. So I'm like, oh, now I see why it takes them a while to put all this together. But no, I don't have results. But yeah, I'll definitely share those with you all, so people know, and we have some idea as to what what insulation values look like, what wind load tests look like too. So
So there you are, you're a garage level scientist rapidly progressing down the materials science and building science pathway. Tell us about your pathway to prefabrication. Did you look at blocks? Did you look at panels? Did you look at, what were the process to that? And then how did you receive the epiphany to do what you're doing now?
Yeah. Well, I should start off by saying that I'm a big fan of hempcrete in all forms. I don't think there's necessarily one right way or one best way, but I think that in the industry there are going to be professionals who develop preferences, and I just wanted to be able to provide a product that could meet a preference that I knew some people would have. So when I remember having some conversations even with like Danny from the Lower Sioux tribe. We talked about the different ways they've worked with hempcrete, and man, they've done such an excellent job there of just doing so much and actually cranking out projects. Love to see that. And I remember he said, like, there's kind of something cool about the old, I shouldn't say old because there's still a lot of people doing it, but cast on site method of doing hempcrete. I mean, I've played around with that too. He said there's kind of this community building nature about it, and it requires a lot of hands and a lot of people to get work done. So it's kind of fun. But at the same time, it is a little slower. It is more inefficient. So that's why, I saw having something that was precast as being potentially the most viable for certain applications, just because that it was the drying component that I kept getting hung up on. And I thought about putting on my carpenter's hat. If we were to frame up a wall and then put all of our cladding and then fill that with hempcrete and then have to wait weeks to potentially months, I thought, well, that's a time period that work could be getting done. So that's where I just leaned more towards doing something that's precast. And also, I was a carpenter, so I like wood framing. I'm biased, right? I like it. And like a lot of people think, oh, well, wood isn't sustainable. Well, actually, softwood lumber typically is carbon negative. A lot of people don't know. Hardwood usually isn't, but softwood is.
Oh
So
yeah, it's very, as long as we're not building more at a higher rate than what the trees will grow, it's very sustainable. They grow back. If you plant them, they grow. And so we just need to manage that in our forestry practices. But yeah, I'm with you. I like working with wood. It has a lot of advantages and disadvantages. I've done stuff with steel as well. And I tell you what, I'll take a splinter over slicing my hand open any day.
I hear you. Yeah. But yeah, I think, all the various ways you can apply hempcrete, what Cam's doing with spray hempcrete, just, I think it's awesome. And to be honest, like there's advantages of that over what we do. I would say there's in some ways advantages what we do over that in certain aspects, but it all kind of comes down to a matter of preference. And I just love to see all of these people get progress and get traction, because what's good for them is what's good for the industry, and that's what's good for me and all of all of humanity and our customers. So yeah, I think I of course we're existing in the precast space because that's what I'm comfortable with and that's what I've played around with the most. But I see a lot of viability with what everyone's doing in the hempcrete space.
Well, you'll get the opportunity to get real deep in the weeds on, the panel, what it is, how it goes together, and all that. And then I do like, and everybody that's come on has been very gracious in not saying, "Hey, my way's better than the other way," because the honest answer is we don't know. And I like how some will merge the two together. Like you might have a block and then you can spray the rest on, or maybe you're spraying that difficult to fill level, or it's a combination of it all. You might use the spray method to install the hemp in a panel that you're then going to set, like Cameron's doing. And so tell us a little bit more about that final transition into what you've got, and then where are you going from now as far as the collaboration and next steps?
Yeah. So, my company has been focusing more on we've been approaching it a little bit slowly, and that's been on purpose because, my goal has always been to scale in proportion with demand. I think that I've seen companies struggle when they assume demand and they raise money and they do big things assuming that there's just going to be customers on the back end once they're able to produce product, and that puts you in a really tough position. So my vision has always been to, well, let's just take it slow, and like if we start off with a 2,400 square foot manufacturing facility, which is what we have now, like that's okay, because right now we could meet the current demand, we could with just that. But if we start getting customers and and we need more space, well, that's what I call a good problem. We'll solve that challenge, and we'll be able to hopefully fund growth with purchase orders and things like that. But yeah, just as far as the specific Z panel development, the Z panel, we started going through the ICCES report process in 2022. We had a new acceptance criteria created. I presented before the ICC board, so they accepted that, and then we're able to do some of the quality control processes. It's very intensive. This is it's something that if anyone wants to go through this process, I would say to just know that it's going to be intense, because there's a lot to it. So after we had the acceptance criteria created, which is essentially like testing parameters. When you have a product that is so novel, they kind of are like, we don't know how to evaluate this, so we need to create new criteria around how to even evaluate it. So that's what they had to do. So then we were able to finally start testing. I think it was fall of 2023. And we started off with just some basic tests, which were like a compression test, water absorption test. I can't slip in my mind. I can't remember the other one right now. We did 3 tests initially. And then this year we've done some of the more intensive ones where we actually had to like construct whole rooms and burn them. That was the fire test. And then the wind load test, and then the insulation test. So our goal is to be done with this ICCES process this year, and potentially as soon as September. That's what I've been told, which has been awesome. Because then I've been waiting to really do a lot in terms of promotion and trying to get projects. But because I want to just have that out of the way. Like it's extremely daunting. It's been very time consuming. So I want to have that done before we can then flip the switch, focus more on manufacturing the product on a larger scale. And also, my goal too is to have 2 divisions of the company where we manufacture the Z panels, but we also do the on-site construction. That's kind of a big goal, but that's where I'm more comfortable. I have a contractor now on my team, so that's great. So that's the space I would like to start dipping into, because then you don't have as many barriers. Because one thing I've always perceived, and maybe this isn't as big of a barrier as I thought, but we can create a cool product, but if there aren't contractors and builders who are willing to use it, that's where we're going to start hitting roadblocks. So I thought, well, we'll just become the builders then, because then we just need to sell the product to those people who want a home and see value in what we're doing, and that's easier versus trying to, kind of arm twist some contractors who've never heard of hempcrete to use something novel and new. So
Yeah, trying to convince somebody to take on an extra pain in the neck, that it's just you can do it the way you've always done it, or you can do something difficult. Which way are you going to pick? And
yeah,
I know, and I really appreciate the wisdom that you bring to this conversation about one, growing at the speed of demand. You've got a good idea, you're taking it through a process, and there's a lot of folks that don't. That dramatically underestimate that process and just how many things need to go into that. And Gene has written some articles on hempbuildmag.com about just how brutally difficult it is to innovate in the construction space. If you're going to bring a new building material to market, even if it's a new systematic assembly of existing building materials, that is a process. And you're talking a little bit about it now, and then we'll get into the weeds on that a little bit about how you did all of those things. And we've had in the mastermind guests from those laboratories about how to do those tests. So if you've got a garage level idea, now you've just begun. You didn't finish, and so you've got that there. And then also just the demand. If CBD taught us anything, is to know the demand before you create the product, and then they way overproduce the market, and then we don't want to way overproduce something just because we can produce a lot of it. We need to create the market and let the market pull the product through the process instead of us pushing it through, because otherwise it'll just be friction at every step of the game. So I appreciate the wisdom that you've brought into that. Are y'all looking at any development to where you'll go out and do either spec homes or, entire developments, or play that role of the builder? Like I myself, for example, am looking at the build hold scenario, or some build sell, but everything I look at it's like creating an investment opportunity. And builders will either do custom homes, spec homes, entire developments, production type of that. Well, what's on the horizon for you?
so yeah, as far as developments, down the road, we would absolutely like to look into the development space. My brother, the contractor, he's done a lot of developments. He's worked with some really large level multifamily projects, so he knows that's his strength. So I think we have the right people to help us with that. But I think that requires some pretty intensive capital. So I'd rather first start off by entering the construction space, and then look at doing developments further down the road. That's the way I kind of see our business kind of naturally progressing. Yeah, as far as projects on the horizon, have a few ideas for just some things that we're going to do that we're going to self fund. We did the cultivated tiny home. I really like that. I kind of like the idea of doing something like I don't know what to call it yet. I'm kind of leaning towards something like a therapy cabin, but something that includes the use of hempcrete, but maybe there's a sauna built into it. Maybe I'm giving away too many good ideas here. I don't know, but I'll throw them out there anyway. I think that would be really cool. Like, a fully non-toxic place that people could go to, and they know it's safe and there's no toxins, and
Oh,
maybe
that's a very popular idea. It's already being built in Dripping Springs, Texas. There's
is that
one, yeah, they're on queue to come in as a contributor, but the whole premise is just to see what it's like to show up, be in a place to where there's nothing that's making you sick, and then you're grounded. They've done the foundation to where you're in connection, and they've really gone to all lengths to make sure that all of the EMFs are away from you, all of the systems that control the climate are separated from you, and so you can just go and it's not just get away to the beach, it's get away from everything and see what that's like. And so yeah, I think that's very popular, and it's going to be once you do that as a resort retreat, you're going to want it in your home. And then that's if COVID taught us anything, is what it's like to be stuck in our houses all day. And so that's a very popular thing, and the health that's in your home is very popular as well. I think you're onto something there. And so you're exploring those development opportunities. You're
Yeah.
cognizant of the capital contribution that's necessary, and you're growing at the speed of what the demand would be. And so moving on. And then what we're hoping is that when others come in and find you, that they'll know what you're going on to, and what's next for you and what's on the horizon and how you're wanting to incubate your business and grow those. And so you've got the panelized systems themselves, so you can sell to other builders. Tell us about that business model on the revenue streams that you're doing with either intellectual property development, doing the the build out side of things. What are the things that you're exploring the most?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So, as far as our business model, our go-to market strategy as of right now is to, once we get through the ICCES report, we're going to scale up manufacturing, and we initially anticipate the business being um, a B2C model where we ship directly to job sites. In the future, we would consider working with distributors if that's what makes sense. But we just think like this B2C is probably our best bet to keep costs as competitive as possible. So our goal is at that point to become more public. That's one thing admittedly, I probably haven't done the best job I could is trying to get out in front of people. I lay low sometimes just because for the longest time I was a one person operation and I, only so many hours in the day. But I think I'd really like to become a little bit more visible, start establishing relationships, meet with contractors, and I, kind of speak their language. So I think I can, establish those relationships and start developing some channels for shipping directly to job sites so we can get some projects lined up. But that's the big thing. You mentioned intellectual property. We do have a patent on the Z panel. I'm very open to other methods for manufacturing, whether it be through licensing agreements or contract manufacturing, because people have asked me like, what I think as a business leader, you have to recognize like where are your strengths. And here again, if I were to be honest, I like the construction space more than I like the manufacturing space. We can do manufacturing. Is it something that I personally love? I'm starting to like it a little bit more, but I didn't initially love it. So if there would be a partner who could come along and say, "Hey, we're open to manufacturing this," and like I said, whether it be through a licensing agreement or a contract manufacturing relationship, we would absolutely explore that. Really, what I'm getting at here is I'm not going to take anything off the table for the best way to continually produce the Z panels and get them into the market. Whatever is the most economically viable, I plan to pursue. But I see our company existing in the future a little bit more in the construction space than we do in the manufacturing space, and that's where I see it going down the road. And I feel like you had another component to your question there, Ray, that I'm just totally blanking on right now. But was there something I'm missing there?
Well, there's the wisdom to pursue the revenue streams that you're good at and that you like. And then if you're doing something that is very profitable but you hate, eventually you're going to sabotage that, or at the very least you're going to not do as good as you otherwise would. And so I think there's a lot of wisdom there. And I like how you brought in the component of, this new team member now has that core competency. And so everybody's got their own personalities. The right butts are in the right seats and everybody's pulling in the right direction. And I can tell you've got a lot of thought and wisdom into what you're doing and how you're doing it and incubating those business systems along the way. And so we'll put it out there is that you're at a good convergence of you could go in any different direction depending on the team and the technology that you build out. And so you've got a lot of opportunities.
Well, I just want to, Zach, you are not a real horn tutor, but I know that you have had some real successes in pitch competitions an SBIR grant and some, different stuff. So what would you say are the three biggest events that have happened in the past, say, 2 years for you as a company? Because I really think, a lot has happened with you that is, significant.
Yeah, great question. The three that come to mind are pretty easy to identify. I think a big one was building the cultivated tiny home and selling it. That was great. It kind of validated the ability for a pretty good sized tiny home on wheels to be built using incorporating hempcrete, incorporating our Z panels, and there was quite a bit of interest in that. So it just validated that market a little bit more. The second thing was we got an investment from an accelerator group here based out of Wisconsin called Generator. That was really big. That was spring of last year, so 2023. So we went through that investment accelerator cohort. They've been providing ongoing mentorship, so that's been great. Yeah, and the third thing is the SBIR contract that we got with the U.S. Army. Really cool project. That's a little different. We and I shared this with Eugene, but we actually got this contract to pursue hemp and mycelium as a potential insulation. Really was a feasibility study, but we kind of took it the next step above and beyond what the contract asked, and we did some prototyping just because that's the type of stuff I love. Like I didn't want to just do, economic research. I wanted to look into like, can we make this, and what are some of the properties of it? So we actually did do prototyping, came up with some material that right now looks very promising. Strictly more strictly as an insulation material. Hempcrete is pretty cool in the way where it's it's more structural than just an insulation. But this is what this hemp mycelium material we're looking at is more so just an insulation material. We even did some lab testing. We sent off our product to have to be insulation tested at a lab called Element Lab in Minnesota. So that was cool. So we even have some data to know like the viability of that. But that's big. Nothing set in stone right now, but it looks like we're going to be getting a phase 2 contract with the Army to commercialize that product and do even further testing. So like I said, that's the contract hasn't been signed, but we've been told we'll be receiving an award for that. So that'll be big. Yeah. Once that's all done.
And that's on the mycelium front?
Yeah. Yep. So it's just 2 ingredients. It's hemp and mushroom mycelium. That's it.
That is fascinating to me. And there's been, I've had a few reach out because of the growth capabilities of cultivating the mycelium with the hemp herd as a substrate. And then there's been a lot of fun conversations, and I'm interested in enough things that I know what it's like to be distracted by shiny objects, but darn, it's a really cool shiny object to look at. And I think there's some good stuff on the horizon, and I'm glad to see things being done in that. Gene, I'm glad you asked that follow-up to, what are some of those things. Now, tell us about where that's going, the direction for what is the objective to have a mycelium with a hemp substrate, or is that in a panel or a block, or how is that being made into a building material?
Yeah, great question. So that's kind of to be determined. The goal with this phase 2 project is to work with them to specifically the Army Corps of Engineers and see what form is most desirable for them, because what you end up with is just a kind of like a high density foam. It's a bio-based foam. So that means you could put it into kind of like a block and have like a foam block that is used to construct walls. You could have it more like a bat insulation that's placed in between your studs. You could have it as more like a panel that is applied on the exterior or interior of walls. So there's a few different potential applications. So that's really what this phase 2 would include is working with them to figure out their most desired application, and then pursuing prototyping that, and then actually doing some real world testing where we create a structure and use that material, test it in the in a real world environment versus just a lab. So that's what we're looking at. It's one of those things where there's a lot more unknowns with it. You know, hempcrete is just more tried and true. If I were to build a structure right now, it totally would be a hempcrete structure. It wouldn't yet do hemp mycelium. There's just more unknowns, but there's potential, and I think there's even hybrid potential where you use both, and that's what's really intriguing to me, because hempcrete is potentially your best material for more outer facing surfaces, more exterior surfaces, whereas hemp mycelium might be a little bit better on the inside, you know, better R value, lighter, easier to work with, those types of things. So all the things that we hope to continue to explore to see what's the most viable path for that unique material.
And I've seen some really neat scenarios to where that mycelium can be a finished surface as well. You know, they're taking that mycelium and then making leather out of it. And so it's got the look and feel of leather. If you put that into, imagine spray foam that is not made out of spray foam, but it's made out of mycelium, and you've got the finished look of a nice, rich grain leather. You know, that is on the horizon, and that's possible, and there's a lot of exciting things. So when I'm going down the rabbit hole on mycelium, I'll definitely include you on the ones that I bounce ideas with, because, like I said, the phone rings with these bizarre questions, because once you throw your vibe out there that you're in this space, the phone rings and people like to talk about things. And so I think that mycelium is something that's really neat, and I'm glad to know that it's being explored. And so Gene, do you have any other questions before we head towards our wrap up? And so we talked about, you know, the horizon for you, and if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to reach out to you? I know some people like email, some people like text messages. You have an Instagram. I see you put the all of the different socials that you have here on your profile, so people can direct to your profile on hempbuildmag.com and the community that's there. And so we want to encourage people to do that. But what's the favorite way that you have for people to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say any or all of the above, because really, if they try to reach me, I'm the one who's doing all the social media. I'm a small company, right? So if they message on Facebook, they're going to get to me. Same thing with Instagram. So if you like Facebook, send us a message on Facebook. If you like Instagram, send me a message on Instagram. If you like text, I can give you my personal cell phone number. Feel free to text or call. And that is 715-470-0677. Yeah, text or call. Otherwise, email was great too. And that's a pretty simple one. It's just Zach, Z-A-C-H, at sativapanel, PANEL.com. So that's it. If you want to come to my house, you can too. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't give out my home address. But well, you can stop in and have a coffee. But no, I won't do that.
Yeah, stop in and have a coffee. And then one thing that we always like to mention to folks, there's a lot of people in this space that are innovative pioneers, and they get a lot of exuberant calls. Make your introduction to Zach, but then be willing to pay for Zach's time to talk about what you want to talk about. Everybody who's been on here has been very gracious, and they're very sharing. But if you've got something to where you're wanting to glean some value, be willing to exchange that value as well, and then pursue those things that make everything come together to where dreams do come true and projects get done. Because our main focus is people having successful projects, and then we're glad to have you along for the ride. Yeah, because we do have some members of our group that are looking to incubate ideas and looking to come up with products. They're not just all builders or wanting to build their own homes. Some of them are looking to bring product into the marketplace, and then we encourage that scenario to where people can come up with stuff, because I'm fond of saying we don't know the best way to do this yet. And so that's where we're all going to have to come together. It might be a combination of things. It might be something that we totally don't know about. But that's how it's going to happen, how the good ideas are going to incubate.
That's exactly it. And I think having that mindset, what you just put out there, Ray, is so important of believing that we probably don't know of the best way to do this yet. And I'm totally willing to admit that. And I think that that's how we keep innovation moving forward. If there's a better way to do it, I'm all for it, you know? So yeah, I think that's a really healthy way to approach advancing the industry.
Yeah, but the mad scientists and the tinkerers are the one that do all of this stuff, and bring it to the market, and then the industrialists will take it the rest of the way. And so we like to let everybody meet and have a cup of coffee and share ideas. And so that's what we're after.